Real Broker is the fastest growing publicly traded real estate brokerage in the world. And today I want to talk about my experience at Real over the last year. I'm pretty much right on top of my 1 year anniversary with Real Broker. I have a lot of thoughts. Let's get into it. How's it going, friends? My name is Jesse Lynch. I run 5 real estate teams around the United States. And on this channel, and honestly, in general, I'm really only interested in working with agents who want to do things a little bit differently. So if that's you, come hang out for a while, subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in working with me, either on my team in the Twin Cities or anywhere nationally, we can be a national team. Very cool, by the way, Real Broker, shout out. Starting your own expansion team with everything, all of the systems that I have in place, very cool. Or just joining Real Broker, go to my website, jesselynch.co, as in Jesse Lynch & Co. And there's a bunch of information there and also ways to get a hold of me. And that'll also be down in the description below. I'm actually doing this whole video with natural light, just because honestly, it's really nice out. There's a nice kind of cloudy sky. It feels very even, feels cozy. So that's what I'm doing. But we're talking about Real Broker and my 1 year review of Real Broker. I'm literally almost to the day I've been at Real Broker for a year. I'm gonna bury the lead here, but the reality is that I really like being at Real Broker. I think it's a really, really great platform. And so that's the first thing. I like it a lot. I don't intend on going anywhere. I'm very, very glad that I made the switch. But there's a whole bunch of things that I want to dive into in detail and get specific about things and certain experiences that I've had within Real Broker. So let's start with the splits and fees. I have a whole video on exactly this concept that's like 20 minutes long. So I'm not going to go super deep into that, but basically $250 startup fee that I only paid right at the beginning. I won't pay that next year. $750 in annual fees. Those are taken out of the first 3 transactions that an agent does in every calendar year. So $250, $250, $250 for the first 3. And then that's done. There are no monthly fees, like no desk fees. I charge my team fees because I provide a lot for them. And then if you wanted to get Chime, which is the CRM, I think that's $40 a month, but it's like the full version of Chime, which I hear is very cool. More on that in a second. The splits are 85-15 up until you cap, which for a single agent is 12K. There's also a 6K option if you join a team. So for example, if you joined Real Broker as a solo agent, you'd have a $12,000 cap. If you joined my team anywhere in the country, then you could have a $6,000 cap, but there's some nuance to it. It's not like, well, obviously just join my team. That's not what I'm saying. But as a team agent, you can have $6,000 cap. So that in itself is really good. And I would say industry leading. And by the way, I came from a 100% brokerage that I paid a ton of money out to, even though, you know, it's billed as 100% brokerage. The reality is Real Broker is way better than, in my opinion, than a lot of these 100% brokerages. And even you pay less into Real Broker than those. It's not just like they offer more, so it's worth paying more. If you do any kind of volume, if you are getting close to capping or anything like that, then my opinion is it's almost break even. I've ended up paying just so much less being at Real Broker than when I was at my previous broker. It honestly blows my mind how different those numbers have shaken out. But it's an 85-15 split with a $12,000 cap for a solo agent, and then you can hit elite agent after you pay in another $6,000 of transaction fees. It's something like 29 transactions after you cap. You pay in $6,000 at that point, and then you get all these stock benefits. So basically everything that I paid into Real Broker, by a long shot, I've gotten back in stocks, and that alone has been pretty wild to watch. I think stocks are boring. I say that in videos all the time. I find them not interesting at all, but honestly, this program in particular is very slick, and as much as I don't like stocks, I do like looking at the stock account with all the money that I've gotten from being at Real. So let's shift over to the agent support and training options. There's a thing called Real Academy, which is part of Workplace. More on that in a second. And Real Academy, for my money, is one of the most valuable assets that Real provides. All of the classes in Real Academy are taught by elite agents. So agents who have to do a pretty dang large volume to even be able to teach. And if an agent is teaching, they know a thing or two, and they can teach across so many different ways of running your business, from YouTube and social media marketing to door knocking and mailers and like these old, probably bus benches. I don't know, actually, maybe not bus benches, but these old classic ways of doing business. There are people teaching those things. And there are just so many training programs, and they're also instantly available to you. And I just think that that's such a wealth of information. I am an elite agent. I actually don't teach yet. I think I will, but I have gone to the training a lot myself to dabble into things that are maybe not my strong suit, but they're adjacent to what I'm doing. Honestly, I don't really pay attention to the things that have nothing to do with my business because I think it's just a distraction, but there are things that are right alongside or very symbiotic with how I run my business. And those things, it's very cool to hear, like, how are people doing things that are in line with what I'm doing? I will say one of the more soft spots maybe of Real is like one-on-one agent training for new agents, right? So mentorship or things like that. I think it'd be very easy to figure out a way to have a mentorship program by joining a team. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. But if you want to join as a brand new solo agent, I think a lot of what you're gonna have to do is look toward your sponsor or your broker or the people who have to join Real. And you're gonna have to ask them for help on those things because Real does not have, like, by default, a mentorship program or like a specific training course on, you know, your state and how to do certain things. There are monthly, like, local brokerage Zoom calls, right? So Minnesota, that's where I am. We have like a state group, and those will meet, I think it's every month, and provide just about an hour of, hey, here's what's going on with, you know, forms in Minnesota, certain platforms in Minnesota, you know, our MLS and things like that. But on the whole, the technical minutia is stuff that isn't maybe quite as accessible for the average brand new agent, but the reality is, the hardest part of being a real estate agent is not the technical minutia, it's getting clients. And Real Academy is fundamentally a gold mine for learning all of those things. Part of Real Academy also, they'll have basically masterminds. So it's not just classes that you can watch that were put on in the past, it's live mastermind. So you can be in a live mastermind with somebody who's doing what you want to be doing at an extremely high volume, and you can ask them questions specifically. So for that side of things, I think Real is basically untouchable, but the specific technical minutia of your state and your forms, that just might be a little bit more asking for a favor from, you know, an agent who's nearby. Let's talk a little bit about technology and tools. First of all, the CRM that Real Broker provides is called Chime. And it's the full version of Chime, and I believe it costs an additional $40 a month if you want to use Chime. I don't use it, but I will say it looks very, very cool. I don't have a CRM. I use a spreadsheet, and people say that I should, but it's not how my brain works, so I don't use one. Probably my favorite piece of tech at Real Broker is something called Real Rezen, or just Rezen. It's basically the app that is the hub of everything that you do as it applies to Real Broker. In Minnesota, we use an app called HomeSpotter, or I do anyway, my team does. HomeSpotter is like the hub of everything we're doing as it pertains to actual houses and actual real estate and actual showings and things like that. But Real Rezen is basically the hub of your business within Real, and there's so many things that you can look at. Rezen also has an AI called Leo. I think it's still relatively new, but it's been around for a little bit, and I've seen it get better and smarter. And so there's things like I could do, like I could just ask it, what was my GCI last year? And then it tells me, and I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna say what it was, but it tells me what my GCI was in the previous year. But it also tells you when your cap renews, when you have reached cap, how close you are to reaching your cap, how close you are to reaching elite agent. It's actually extremely helpful. And it's honestly just so easy to access pretty much everything on that. It'll also tell you information about your brokerage. It'll have the EIN of your brokerage, or help you find a W-9. All these random things that at other brokerages, for the most part, you have to email somebody. And here you don't have to email somebody. You can also contact support directly through the app. More on support in a little bit. They've really made a hub on a mobile phone, which it seems actually way overdue, by the way, for brokers to have come up with that, like by easily a decade. But I can also look at every single transaction that I have currently pending. I can look at details of every single transaction that I had previously. You can actually look at documents from current and previous transactions. So if somebody said, hey, you know, it's 2 years ago, but you have access to whatever, you don't have to go digging for it. It's right there. RealBroker also uses, and everybody who's in RealBroker has access to Workplace, which is fundamentally Facebook, but only for the brokerage. Now there's 15,000 agents, so there's a lot of people on there, but Workplace is neat. It seems like an interesting way to help build community for, you know, a company that is national, even international, but there still manages to be some level of connection, and more on Workplace a little bit later on. RealBroker also has plenty of default marketing items like flyers, signage, business cards, things like that. I don't use any of those, so I'm not necessarily an expert on those things. I see that they exist. They're not bad, but personally, I believe in building my own brand. I think you should build your own brand, and you should use all of your own branded everything. Personal opinion. A little bit more on that again later, because there's maybe a couple caveats to that. The one thing though that I know for sure as far as like tech and tools goes is that it seems to me that RealBroker is implementing things that no other brokerage has ever done before. That doesn't necessarily mean that I care about all of it, but it's there and it's things that they're working on. They're also working on a credit card that every agent has access to based on your previous and upcoming transactions. It's pretty wild, but I use that to say they're working on things that I've never even heard of in the real estate world. So let's go back to the branding and marketing stuff that I was talking a little bit. Personally, I'm obsessed with branding. If you've watched this channel, you probably have noticed that a little bit. And one of my favorite things about Real is that it's just a wonderful platform to build a brand on. I think a lot of other brokerages, bigger ones, more traditional ones, older guard of real estate, is more like build your brand under the umbrella of this. I mean, maybe technically that's how, like, you know, the government wants it to be, but nonetheless, they allow us to build a brand on top of Real. And Real can almost feel transparent to the rest of the brand. The biggest thing about that is that I love how simple their branding elements are. It just is Real. You can say brokered by Real. I think you can just have the Real logo. It's so simple. It's not like a mouthful. It's not tacky. It feels fresh and new and professional. And again, it's just invisible and your brand can shine. Now, if you're new to the brokerage and you need signs for a listing, right? Maybe you just switched over, or maybe you're brand new and you're like, oh shoot, I have to get a for sale sign and I have a listing that's coming up super soon. That might actually be one of the challenges of switching over, is that the signage won't necessarily exist, right? Probably on a local level, you could get a sign from another agent, right? Or another team or your broker or something like that. You probably could find a for sale sign, but it might be branded to them. But it's not a brick and mortar brokerage, right? So there's no office to go into and grab signs. There's also no emails saying like, hey, somebody took six open house signs and they need to be returned. There's like none of that, right? But the onus is on you to find your open house signs, right? To get your own open house signs. I've used generic ones for about the first year. I actually only just ordered my own branded open house signs. And honestly, there's a big part of me that thinks it doesn't really matter at all, because most people these days are finding open houses through the likes of Zillow or Realtor or HomeSpotter or the MLS. Most people are saying, oh, there's an open house there, I'm gonna go there. And some portion of people are just dicking around and are looking for something to do, and then they maybe see a sign and do that. And so no open house signs, I think, is the wrong choice. Branded open house signs, I think, only matters a little bit, but to have branded open house signs, I think what it does is it opens up the opportunity for somebody who's very loosely looking, who doesn't have representation, to show up to your open house and ultimately maybe use you as an agent. A couple other thoughts on branding and marketing is that Real Broker in Minnesota has a pretty limited reputation. There's not many people, even other agents are like, what's real? But the brokerage is just not that well known in my local market and probably a lot of other local markets. I honestly don't care at all. And then last thought on the marketing aspect is you won't see Real Broker marketing to agents to join Real Broker, right? You won't see like Indeed ads. Basically, you won't see any visible representation of people trying to recruit agents to Real Broker. And that's not how they do it. Fundamentally, all of the marketing to get agents to join Real Brokerage is driven by revenue share. And more on revenue share in a second. Next up, I want to talk about support. There's no brick and mortar, right? There's no physical office. There's nowhere to go into and cry to your broker because something is going wrong, right? It's all online. But I will say the access to support is very, very smooth and very, very easy. And also access to my broker anyway, whose name is Travis Sabby, Minnesota broker, very good dude. I don't need him that often, right? Personally, I don't need him that often. Maybe a handful of times, maybe 5 to 10 times over the last year. But every time I've needed him, he's been very easy to get a hold of. And every time I've reached out to support, I do hear back very, very soon. And I think because they're a large national brokerage with now 15,000 agents, the support systems can have this like level of scalability and efficiencies of scale that are difficult to accomplish at a more local level. But honestly, the people in the support staff, and there are local people there, by the way, for local situations, they actually are super, super nice and very, very easy to deal with. So it's not like some call center. It actually seems to be, properly helpful. A couple things that I think maybe people are interested in that I have not tapped into, or I don't particularly care about that much for my business, but does the brokerage help provide any lead generation, and are there referral programs? Lead generation, I think fundamentally the answer to that is just no, the brokerage doesn't. And honestly, I think that's good. I think if you're gonna be a real estate agent, you have to know how to get your own clients. And if you are just banking on your brokerage providing you with clients, I don't think you're gonna do well in real estate. That's maybe harsh, but I think that's generally the truth. So no lead generation that I know of, although Chime supposedly has some of those things, but they might teach you how in the Real Academy, but they are not just handing you leads for you to take on as clients. And Real Broker actually has a pretty robust referral program. And earlier I mentioned Workplace, right? Workplace, which is Facebook, but for a business. And Workplace has like a referral center. And there are constantly people looking for an agent within Real, which again, growing, 15,000 agents. And there constantly are people looking where they have a client who's moving from, wherever they are to somewhere else. And if somebody wanted to make that a priority, right, that referral center, right, a main priority of theirs to gain the trust of other agents and be helpful, etc., then I think a person could actually do pretty well just off the referral center alone. And so now on this topic of Workplace and referral center and sort of a growing community, I want to talk about like networking, professional development opportunities, and things like that. That seems to be a very common trend in the real estate world, something that is almost omnipresent because you are, an army of one a lot of the time. You almost need some of those things. So Real Broker, I think, does this at a really, really great level. And obviously on a national and internet-based level, the Facebook, the Workplace situation is a really good way to do some of that. But I think they are really, really great on their annual national event or international event. Again, it's for anybody at Real can go to it. It's called Rise. And Rise 2023, Alex Hormozy was the headliner, who's one of the biggest names on the internet as far as the professional development world goes. But aside from Rise, which is huge, it's in Vegas. I think it's always in Vegas. Rise is massive. I've never been to it. I might try to go this year. We'll see. But other than those, I've found that on a local level, there are agents who are organizing workshops or organizing panels or maybe conferences or things like that in which to network, and also reaching out, past Real Broker and to other brokerages and hosting events where a bunch of people can be there. Some of the networking and these more like professional development opportunities to me are some of the very best aspects of Real Broker. And I'm gonna save that for the very, very end because it's actually a pretty long thought, but Real Rise is like a massive event. I think it's only gonna keep getting bigger and bigger. And then another thing is that in that Real Academy, there are monthly masterminds across so many different avenues of running a real estate business. And I can't stress that enough. There are some really, really great opportunities in that. And I think a lot of people are going to wonder what the brokerage culture and atmosphere feel like because there is no brick and mortar. And yeah, there is no brick and mortar. But I will say locally, I have found Real Broker to be more collaborative than somewhere that had a brick and mortar. But while maybe there's a little bit less schmoozing inside of an office, I definitely schmoozed at my last brokerage, maybe a little bit more than I do now. Although now I have a team, so now I'm schmoozing with my team. If you were a solo agent, a lot of that would be gone. I have a team, I have an office, I do have my own brick and mortar, so I don't miss that at all. And one thing that's been very cool is I've collaborated with local team leaders here, and actual collaborations, like a panel, things like that, but also just talking with them about like, how do I pull something off, right? How do they handle certain things within their team? Things like that have been very, very helpful to me. And because Real is national, there's a much higher likelihood that somebody is doing what you want to be doing or what you are doing, and you can bounce ideas off of them. I think that would be very difficult to achieve at a smaller or even just a bigger but local brokerage. So now let me get to the worst part about Real Broker from my perspective. Been here a year, I've done a lot of transactions. I run a team, I've done transactions on my own as a solo agent, I've done referrals. And what's the worst part about Real Broker? This is honestly probably very specific to my business, but it's still the referral check situation. I do a lot of business through referrals because I have teams in other places, right? And those come in technically as referral checks. And if those agents aren't on Real Broker, which they aren't all, but that is hopefully changing very soon, they're not all on Real Broker, but so if a check comes in and it's a real referral check from some brokerage in some other state, tracking that down is difficult and annoying. And I usually have to wait a long time, or I kind of just have to like aggressively track them down. But some states will have the brokerage send the check, some states will have the title company send the check. And some states, the buyer's agent doesn't select the title company, so it's a different freaking title company every time that's sending out the referral check. That's very, very annoying. And that's not all Real's fault, but once the check has been sent, it gets sent to a large national brokerage. And the one benefit I had at a smaller, more boutique style brokerage is that when a check came in, it was much easier to track it down. If it came in from a certain state, there's very few people who that might be for, at least reliably. And so that money can feel like it's somewhat adrift in the ether. But I will say the app at least helps me keep track of, has this been closed out? So there will be times where a transaction isn't closed out for like a month. And it's only because I haven't chosen to track it down that it just sits there. Probably not the best idea all the time, but sometimes I'm busy and I don't have time to track down a referral check. So my biggest gripe, for sure, with Real Broker is how the referral check situation works. They also ask like what day the referral check was sent out, what the date on it is, if there's like a reference number on the check, which are not things that I necessarily get from the referring agent. So again, if I don't get that, I have to then track those things down. It's pretty annoying. But unless you intend on starting a national, size team where a lot of money is coming in that way, then you probably don't have to worry too much about that. And unless you're really busy and you don't have time to track down your money, if you're, doing smaller volume, mid-sized volume, that's probably gonna be a little more precious to you to say, oh, I wanna get that soon. But because I'm really busy and because I have the national thing going on, those checks can just sort of sit in the ether for a little bit too long. And I realized that the best part of Real Broker should be its own video. So that's gonna be right here. If you can click on something, click on this right here. Best part about Real Broker, I believe this, and there's a lot to say on it, or it's gonna be down in the description, the best part about Real Broker. So please go watch that video. Don't just end on the worst thing. That's like a more personal gripe than anything. But all right, this lighting just looks so bad in here. Bye.